I'm Richard.
And I'm Gary, and these are our incredible stories. Hello and welcome back to all of our listeners from around the world and across the United States. We're happy to have you back with us for some more incredible stories. Now, if you're listening for the first time, welcome to our program. We hope that you enjoy it, and we hope that you return every Friday for new episodes. So why don't we go ahead and get started?
I think that's a wonderful idea. And by the way, Gary, I would like to especially welcome all of our listeners from, get this, 28 different countries around the world.
That's a lot of people.
28 different countries around the world. And we've got some very faithful ones from places like France and Canada and Australia who seem to be pretty regular listeners.
Even Canada.
That's right. And so everybody is special. We welcome each and every one of you, and we're so glad you're with us this evening. Now, Gary, it seems almost impossible to believe that it was more than a dozen years ago that you and I took a plane and flew to Asheville, North Carolina, up in the Great Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. North Carolina, right near Tennessee.
Yeah.
And we met with Bob Weatherwax, one of the original owners and trainers of Lassie, an iconic movie and television animal.
That is very true.
Yes, he and his father, Rudd, were the ones who brought Lassie to the world and brought lots of joy to the world for many, many decades, starting in the early 1940s and continuing on to this very day.
That's very true.
Now, Bob met with us, like I say, more than a dozen years ago, and we recorded him for a short documentary that you were doing, which was called The Weatherwax Legacy. Now, The Weatherwax Legacy went on and won a number of awards at various film festivals across the United States and around the world.
It absolutely did. And actually what it started out was was a pitch because Bob had wanted to do a documentary about his father, about Lassie and their career and all of that. And so we went up there with the idea that we could get him something that would garner some kind of attention for either a documentary,
full-length documentary, or a book.
Yeah, or a book, which both ended up happening, and we were the ones that produced both of those.
Yeah, both happened, and both of them came from us.
We sold it to ourselves, didn't
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. So anyhow, what we have today is something very, very special. You're going to hear the inside story behind Lassie and some other very famous Hollywood dogs. Asta from the Thin Man movies, Old Yeller, and Daisy from the Blondie series, and John Wayne's dog in Big Jake and Hondo.
Yeah.
So you're going to hear the inside story from the two men who made this all possible. And they are, without a doubt, known as the world's greatest dog trainers, and certainly the greatest of any kind of animal trainer in the history of Hollywood. So I can't think of anything more special than having this story told by Bob Weatherwax himself. And when his father was still alive, he started partnering up with his father and working Lassie. And then when his father passed away in 1985, Bob continued with Lassie for a number of years afterwards.
Yeah.
So Bob has had a lot to do with the Lassie legend, lifelong, as a matter of fact, because he was only 2 or 3 years old when his father, Rudd, was pasting little baby food on his cheeks when he was training the original Lassie, a dog named Pal, to kiss human beings for the movie.
It was for, what's her name? Elizabeth Taylor.
Elizabeth Taylor was
teaching him how to kiss Elizabeth Taylor. And so,
in the movie, Lassie Come Home. And he used Bob, toddler Bob, at 2 or 3 years old, to get that training done.
That's right.
So we're going to hear the story directly from the man whose entire life has been spent with Lassie.
Well, my grandfather was Walter Weatherwax, and he passed away when I was only 3, but he moved to New Mexico, where my father was born in 1907, and he was an Army Territorial Scout for the Indians, and he also was a U.S. Marshal, but not all the time. It was one of these things like when they wanted a posse, they came and they'd say, Walter, put on your badge, put your gun on, we're getting ready to go out and look for bandits, which they did one time. So he also trained horses and was a trick rider for Buffalo Bill's Wild West Circus. My father could trick ride too. He knew horses, he could train them. He'd learned these things from his father. But my father would go down, I guess there was this thing called a Nickelodeon, put a nickel in the Nickelodeon and you'd wind it and you could see things. Well, my father fell in love with the whole concept of Rin Tin Tin, a dog that plays in movies, you know. He really loved that. He says, this is what I want to do. How he got into the whole thing is he came to Hollywood and he was doing stand-in work, you know. They'd go down and be extras. He realized if he took a little dog with him, that would be an extra thing, you know, that they'd say, oh, well, not only do we get a kid for the extra, we have a dog too, so it's extra bonus there. So he'd get picked over a lot of other kids. So he had a shot where the dog, he's supposed to be on a newspaper, delivering papers on a bicycle, and the dog is with him, following him. Well, what he did is he taught the dog to take the newspaper. The dog ran in the house with the newspaper, and because they had the door open, the people were outside. He runs into the house, and the director says, well, you're finished, but he says, we need the dog for the interior shot. Well, then my father went and did it where he drops the paper and goes back out the door for the interior shot. And there's a guy named Henry East there that saw this, and he was an animal supplier for dogs. And he saw my father's talent, and he says, you want to go to work for me? And my father went to work for him, and for him, he trained Asta for the Thin Man. My father didn't keep collies. Collies didn't get jobs. You know what we got our jobs with? Most of them were mutts. I'd go out and, as a kid, I didn't have anybody to play with, so they'd find me out in the kennel with one of the mutts, flavor of the day. And he did have a couple of shepherds because they got jobs. And we had a bulldog because they got jobs. But mostly it was mutts. Nondescript dogs is what the movies wanted. So he didn't have a collie. And this guy named Howard Pat brought this collie to him. They were friends. He was a trainer himself. And he says, this dog chases motorcycles, and his owner wants him broken. And he says, I can't break him with chasing these motorcycles. Could you? So Dad says, yeah, for I think it was $10 or something. I don't know. Anyway, Dad couldn't break him of it either. And so he came back, and Dad said, I can't break him of it. He says, just forget the whole thing. And he said, well, but you do owe me board for about $10 for boarding him. And Jack said, well, keep the dog in lieu of the $10. So actually, last was a $10 purchase. This dog Pal. Well, then my father didn't know what to do with him, and you know, times are tough. He had to feed all these dogs, and so he was going to take. My mother said, well, he was going to take him to the pound, but he decided, no, I can't do that. And here comes this Lassie Come Home movie. Well, my father's preparing to do a movie called A Rip Goes the War. This was during the wartime, so they were making those type of movies, and now he has to go get this dog. Well, the dog has mange, he has no hair, he's a mess. And he gets the dog and goes in there because they told him, look, we need a dog to stand in for this other dog. It's not working properly. MGM had hired their own collies. And he said, the dogs are not performing properly. We need you to come in, Rudd, at least do this river shot. So Dad prepared for the river, basically. That's all he prepared for. And the dog swam in the river, and the current started carrying the dog down the river. So Dad just kept working, and he came out in front of a color cam that they were testing, and Dad just kept working him. He had him come out, lie down, crawl, get on your side, struggle. They shot it, you know, and the director looked at that, and he says, you know what? He says, Pal swam in and Lassie swam out. They took it back, looked at the footage, and they said, this will be in color. We were all the substitute prop boy that you used, or girl that you used to train the dog on before you went with Roddy McDowell or Elizabeth Taylor. I was the guy you teach the dog to kiss in the face. I had baby food on me all the time, and eventually you get away from the baby food, the dog learns to kiss you. But I always had that stuff in my face, and when I was about 11 or 12, I maintained 40 dogs before I went to school. And I came home and took care of them after that, and then fed them at night. And so I knew all about dogs, as far as that goes. But I actually didn't become a trainer until I went on the Lassie show in 1962, and I actually started to learn how to train a dog. We would do fairs and rodeos sometimes. I never liked rodeos, but we did fairs. And what he would do is he'd have a writer put on his contract, there was an additional page, that said that wherever we go, that we would go to a hospital, a children's hospital of some type. It didn't matter what type. Whether it's, whatever the illness is, it didn't matter. He did that, and it was tough on him too. I could see this is not good. This is hard to do. Why do you do that? He says, I came from nothing. He says, I'm fortunate. It's my church, he says. That's how I do my church. And then I thought about that, and I thought about, in retrospect, the hospitals that we did. And I've done my movie career. 42 years of making TV, movies. I couldn't even tell you my body of work. It's vast, and I said, well, I'd like to apply this in another way. I want to go to what we did with those personal appearances as hospitals. I want to teach, and with what, autistic people. I've taken Lassie to people with Alzheimer's. They didn't know who it was, but they were happy. I would like to do that, and I'd like to show people how to train their dogs, to properly train them, so they can go and do these things. See the veterans from the war that have come back, and these dogs are so good for any type of therapy, for anything.
For some children and adults with autism, a service dog can really make a big difference. There are some little kids that instantly just take the dogs. They are the best buddies with dogs. And that child would be a good candidate for service dog.
I'm not going to train a lot of dogs myself. I've trained so many dogs, but I can show other people how to train their dogs. So he's properly trained. They have that venue, they have that avenue and that pathway, so they can go and work with people's hearts and minds.
Wow. That female voice that you heard in there was somebody quite famous too, Gary. That was Temple Grandin.
Yeah, we were able to get
Temple Grandin to be part of this little promotional video. Now, folks, if you'd like to see this video, it is on YouTube. You can go ahead and go on YouTube and search the Weatherwax Legacy, and it will come up. And it's also on our podcast channel, the Weatherwax Legacy.
That it is.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to IMDb, and I think it even links up there.
Oh, yeah,
as well.
I think so. Yeah. IMDb, the International Movie Database, which is a must for anybody who loves their movies. So that was the Weatherwax story in Bob Weatherwax's own words. You heard his own voice. And he did say his body of work in Hollywood was vast. That includes movies, TV shows, you name it. In fact, he was working the dog Einstein on the movie Back to the Future when his father passed away in 1985.
Yeah. Well, to give you a little bit more of a background about Bob and Rudd, I mean, that little clip doesn't really tell you everything. It gives you a good little picture about what they did. But the career that Rudd had went all the way back to Aston the Thin Man and working with those dogs, and then the dog from the Blondie TV series. And then, of course, Lassie's really what gave Rudd his notoriety. And it's amazing to me to think that the original dog, Pal, was a throwaway dog, pretty much.
Yeah,
it was
$10.
$10. The original owner had given up on the dog being useful for anything, and Rudd was able to take this dog and turn it into
a beloved icon.
Which is recognized around the world
today.
to this very
70
day.
some years or more later.
Right. But from there, and it's interesting because this has come up on a few radio shows I was listening to this week in my car. They do little quick facts. They were talking about how after the Lassie films that they hadn't fully paid Rudd what he had deserved for the work that he did. So they gave him the rights to Lassie. And he took that and turned it into the Lassie TV show, which became incredibly popular during the 50s and 60s, and then even on into the 70s with all sorts of variations, and even into the late 80s and early 90s, and then what was it, mid 90s, that they had the new Lassie film, which was the last one that Bob worked on. But Rudd had a career all the way up to the time he died with Lassie. And then when Bob took over, he continued working with Lassie, but then he had his own career training dogs like Einstein in Back to the Future, and that dog's name was OJ. And
it wasn't Einstein? Oh, the real name was OJ.
The real name was OJ.
Yeah, that's
Einstein
right.
was
the
the name of the
Weatherwax
dog.
dog's name was OJ, and he played Einstein in the movie Back to the Future.
But that being said, OJ was an adopted dog.
Yep.
It's kind of a theme with them that they.
Bob said most of their dogs, if not all, were rescues.
Right. And then what was the name of the one from Old Yeller? The one that played Old Yeller?
Spike.
Spike was a throwaway dog.
Sure, he was.
And adopted. And I maybe not use the word throwaway, but was a dog that was adopted
from a rescue.
From a rescue, and was turned into another iconic. Animal star.
And some of them that didn't become iconic were nevertheless in movies that many people would recognize, such as John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah, he had a whole team of dogs. Now, he did not train the main dog that opens up the film and walks through the different parts of the encampment in the film, but his dogs were the ones that were in the kennel. They were part of the sled team.
Yeah, going crazy.
Dogs. Yep. When they see the new one, they're freaking out.
Yeah.
But he trained all of those dogs, and he worked on the set for a good period of time. But so more than just Lassie, he has a career that covers a lot of different movies that are notable and recognized by a lot of different people.
Gary, I love to explore some of the parallels in the careers of both Rudd and Bob. Rudd did John Wayne's dog in Hondo. Bob did John Wayne's dog in Big Jake. Rudd did the dog in the original Thing, and Bob did the dogs in John Carpenter's The Thing.
That's true. Now, I got a question. A Big Jake, the dog that's in Big Jake is a collie. Is that one of the Lassie dogs?
No, I don't think so. Was it a collie?
It's a collie.
Okay.
It's a dirty collie.
Yeah, I don't think it was. They wouldn't mix the two.
Well, the dog is covered in dirt and has a little bit of grime on it. So I wouldn't be surprised if all actors need to have a wide range, so they don't get typecast.
Yeah, and if folks want to know a lot more about the Weatherwax story and the wonderful Weatherwax dogs who have spread love around the world, Bob's official memoir is titled Four Paws to Fame. Paws, P-A-W-S, Four Paws to Fame. And it's available at all online retailers, including Amazon worldwide. Four Paws to Fame. It's the official Weatherwax memoir, loaded with great behind-the-scenes stories.
Absolutely. So if you get a chance, I suggest looking for it. And the author, I know this guy. He's worked on a few books before. I can't think of his name.
Yeah. It could be Richard of Richard and Gary's Incredible Stories, couldn't it?
Could be. Nothing like a little shameless promotion.
Like
for
you
your
said
own
at
book.
the beginning of the broadcast, we tried our best to get the very best of professional folks to do a full-length documentary and a book, and for one reason or another, that didn't materialize, so it fell on you and me, and I think we did a pretty good job on both.
Yeah.
What's the name of our full-length documentary, Gary?
Isn't that the Weatherwax Legacy?
No, this is the Weatherwax Legacy. Taking Hollywood
That's right. Taking
by
Hollywood
Storm.
by Storm, yeah.
Taking Hollywood by Storm is the official, or not the official, but the full-length version of the Weatherwax Legacy, and it was directed by Gary.
Yeah, how about that? Unfortunately, though, even though we have a ton of DVDs, we have no way to sell them. So,
well, that's okay. We've made sure that copies have gone to very deserving people.
That's true.
In all sorts of situations, and we've made it available also online, so you can watch the entire Taking Hollywood by Storm.
Oh, that's right. We have that up
YouTube.
on YouTube.
Yeah.
I see it right here.
So, and it's free. It's free. So everything we do, we share with the world for free, and so that is also available to everyone. One last thing before we wrap up this evening. We have to go ahead and pay tribute to Wendy Francisco. Wendy Francisco is the lady who created that beautiful music that you heard behind Bob when he was talking, as well as the theme music for our documentaries, By My Side. And so Wendy Francisco not only wrote it, she performed it, and so we are deeply in her debt for providing such very inspirational music.
Absolutely. It ties everything together.
Yes, it does.
All right, well, that is it for now. We appreciate you guys stopping on by again to join us for some more incredible stories. And like I said at the beginning, if this is your first time listening, hit that like and subscribe. Join us again each and every Friday for more incredible stories. And until next time,
I'm Richard.
And I'm Gary, and this was an incredible story.